massive shout out to Action for Public Housing and everybody that has joined together to march and join and rally today for housing justice here in New South Wales and across the country. I would like to begin, as we always begin, by acknowledging that we are here on unceded land that was stolen and colonised, and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded, and express my public support for Lydia Thorpe, Senator last night in the Federal Parliament, who attempts to confirm that sovereignty in our national legislation in the recognition of the Voice to Parliament legislation, and express my personal disgust at the fact that not another senator in that chamber backed her in her attempt to confer sovereignty in relation to the Voice legislation. When we are talking about the idea of public housing on public land, can I say this? It is not public land, it is not Crown land, it is First Nations land, and that land was stolen and never ceded. And so if anyone is determining at what should happen in relation to public land and public housing right now, it should be our First Nations people. We heard from Lorna the complete disgraceful displacement of First Nations people from Redfern and Waterloo, and that will continue with the demolition and destruction of the Waterloo public housing estate. We know that the ongoing destruction and devastation of our public housing is just another way to ensure that Sydney becomes a playground for the rich and uber wealthy. We are accused of being NIMBYs. We are accused of always saying, no, not in my backyard. Well, it's not their fucking backyard. It's the First Nations people backyard, and they stand in solidarity with the need to protect the fact that public housing remains in our city. And what I say is this: if our governments really want to act on the idea of delivering more density for our city to address the housing crisis, then I think they should have a look at what kind of homes they should be demolishing. I don't think it's 82 Wentworth Avenue. I don't think it's Waterloo. I think you could probably look a little bit east to the likes of the however many $1 million mansion that sits there that Mike Cannon-Brooks owns, or one of the other large, amazing properties that are there, because they're not struggling from homelessness, they're not at risk of homelessness, so why not demolish and acquire one of their homes and build some high-density public housing on that land? But somehow we don't do that, because somehow the concept of private land and private home ownership is put over and above the idea of people having a safe, secure, affordable, accessible and a sustainable place to live. Somehow the likes of the uber wealthy that own hundreds of millions of dollars of mansions, the people that own holiday homes throughout this state and around this country, the people that make profit from the crisis in the rental market right now, are put as a higher priority than women who are currently sleeping in cars, than people that are currently sleeping rough in the middle of winter in tents. Apparently, we care more about their profits on their property investments than we do about the fact that children have nowhere to live in this city, in this state and in this country. And I am sickened to my core when I hear the Prime Minister talk about the fact that he grew up in public housing. Because every day, we hear stories of devastation that are occurring and trauma that is occurring because of failed lack of maintenance and respect of the dignity of people living in public housing. Because we know that state and federal governments have refused to put in the funding needed. And so today we get an announcement. $2 billion. Sounds like a lot, right? Unless you look at how much a submarine costs. Unless you look at how much the stage 3 tax cuts cost. Well, can I just say that it's better than nothing? But what will it deliver? And what do the Greens want to see? What we want to see is $2.5 billion committed every year to invest in public and affordable housing. And when we say affordable housing, we don't talk about some wishy-washy concept of affordable housing. We talk about affordable housing being something that is a 25% or less of people's income, and that the housing cost is set to people's income, not to some arbitrary market value set by the likes of the private property market. And when we hear the fudging of the term social housing or diverse housing or community housing, we say bullshit to that. What we want is public housing in public hands, delivering for the community. We also know that everyone is stressed in a rental crisis right now, and so I'm pleased to say that now that we have managed to stop the New South Wales government from introducing rental auctions, which who the fuck thought we would have to deal with that fight, we are now going to move forward with our bill to introduce an immediate rent freeze in New South Wales. I will be introducing that bill in this sitting of Parliament in the coming fortnight, and I urge you all to step up the pressure on Labor to say that there is no excuse. There is no excuse to not support that in the middle of a rental crisis. We know that freezing rents is not the only solution, but we cannot have a situation where landlords continue to profit from the private rental market crisis while we are waiting for people to end unfair no grounds evictions, to deliver on the public housing that we need and address the homelessness crisis in this state. We do not want to see more people evicted to homelessness. I end on this. I want to offer my absolute thanks and respect to the people that have been building the action for public housing and grassroots actions that have taken place. I want to retrospectively offer my solidarity to the incredible occupation that occurred in the last week in Glebe and thank those activists for being there. I acknowledge the Deputy Mayor, Green Sylvia Elsmore, that was there standing in solidarity, our councillor and the Inner West Councillor, Liz Atkins, and recognise the fact that as Greens, we know that our power does not sit in the Parliament or in the halls of the council chambers. We know that our purpose and our voice is to represent the community and the activists on the street. I urge you to hold us to account in pushing that. But I say to you this as a final thing. Everything seems impossible until it happens. 2 weeks ago, federal Labor was saying that there was no more money in the budget to deliver for public and social housing. Today, the Prime Minister announces $2 billion. 5 years ago, the New South Wales Labor Party said there's no way they could end no grounds evictions. At the end of last year, they made a commitment to deliver on it if they formed government, and it will happen by the end of the year. We know that there was no chance to be able to see that there would ever be a future where we got rid of the Liberal National Government's agenda when it comes to the demolition of public housing homes. Just because the Minister says today she's planning to go ahead does not mean that it cannot be stopped. Because we together collectively are winning this struggle to make sure we protect public housing in our city, and we are committed to the idea of freezing rents, to stopping the sell-off and demolition of public housing, and making sure that we are seeing real money invested in the delivery of more public housing into the future, because there is no excuse for anyone to be sleeping in a car or a tent when we are a wealthy country and we are delivering billions of dollars in tax concessions to the uber wealthy. Thank you very much. I'm Jenny Leong. It's wonderful being here. Solidarity with you all.